it was around 4:35 in the afternoon. I'm walking from my office to the bathroom. And thank God I was walking close to the wall because all of a sudden I felt this pain in my back. And I had never experienced that before. And it was like this sharp pain, tears in my eyes. Like I was like, I like you would have thought that somebody like hit me really hard, like right in my lower back.
Yeah.
And I was right outside of a conference room and I like hobbled, like literally, like very carefully into the conference room, sat down and thought it would just pass. And I was in so much pain. I felt like I couldn't walk. Luckily, my husband was in a meeting not far from my office that day. I call, I mean, literally, and I'm like, it's not even the end of the day yet, right? And I'm like, I need you to come and get me. And urgent care. And they said, oh, you threw out your back. And I was like, I mean, I'm like 35, right?
Walking in the hallway.
Yeah, walking in the hallway. You know, I think of people who throw out their back as being either much older or frankly much more physical than I was at the time. Like, and I was like, oh, how did when I explained to the doctor, I was like, I'm literally walking. I didn't do any like weird, you know what I mean? Like crazy move or anything. And she said, nope, that just is what happens.
In a profession that often prizes perfection and endurance, how do you learn to listen to your body and build a sustainable career on your own terms? What does resilience really look like after a company winds down? And how do you reclaim your voice and wellness in the process? Today on The Abstract, I am joined by my new friend. We've known each other for a little while. Keita de Souza, General Counsel of Ryse, a real estate investment marketplace that's unlocking access to the $1.5 trillion lease asset market. Prior to Ryse, Keita served as General Counsel of Ryse, a prop tech startup that wound down in 2023. She spent over 8 years in big law at firms like Goodwin, the background spanning real estate restructuring and other complex deals. And she's done some other really cool stuff too. Before that, she launched a catering company in Washington, D.C., did policy work at the Women's Prison Association, and was a Coro Fellow. She's also a yoga teacher and teaches everywhere from yoga studios to a transitional house for women coming home from New York City's jails. We're going to talk a little bit about yoga today. I don't remember if I put it in the script or not, but we're going to chat about it. With that, welcome to this episode of The Abstract.
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about this.
Okay, let's we don't want to dwell on big law for too long, but let's go back and let's start there. You know, what did your time in big law, those early years, teach you about sort of pace of life, quality of life, dealing with pressure? I'm sure you learned a lot.
Absolutely. Like where to start with that one. So much. I remember, and I was trying to think when I was preparing for this, I was trying to think, where did this come from? But I remember very clearly in law school having this idea that, okay, I'm going to go to big law when I made that decision. And I said, okay, this is going to be really hard, but you're going to work really hard and you're going to run as fast as you can. And you're going to go for as long as you can. And then when you hit your wall, then you'll figure out what's next. I mean, that was really the plan, right? And in my mind, I had that like trajectory is like 5 years. Again, where any of this came from, I really couldn't tell you. But there was this energy that I had, and I think a lot of young associates have, where they're like, okay, they know they're signing up for long hours, hard work, all of the things. And they just are ready to just push. At least I certainly was. I was just ready to just push. And that's exactly what I did. And I was not at all focused on anything related to balance, wellness, kind of any of those buzzwords. The focus was put your head down and do the work. And in some ways that was good, right? Because I learned a lot and built a reputation, all that stuff. But the problem is, and what I've learned, is that it's not sustainable. And
Mhm.
what was the issue? It was the sustainability. How do I continue? And if I were to add that to your intro, right? How do you continue to practice
Mhm.
a high level while still maintaining your health in all of
Mhm.
those aspects? Your mental health, physical health, spiritual health, emotional health, like, all of the health words. That was the part that I had to figure out.
Was there a moment I mean, I know that there was a point where, like, the work impacted your physical health, but was that the moment, or was there a moment where you realized this isn't sustainable, to use your word?
Yeah, yeah, that was the moment, and, it's unfortunate that that's how it had to happen, but sometimes you gotta get, like, a really big, like, punch in the face to wake you
Mhm.
up and to kinda change what you're doing, and I don't I like to think it's human nature, and it's not just me that's like that.
We're
But
all stubborn. I'm stubborn too.
yeah, okay, good, good, thank you. Thank you for telling yes, making me feel better. So, what happened there was actually 2 things. The first thing that happened, I was around a 5th year. So,
Mhm.
interesting that I had in my mind 5 years of push.
Mhm.
Um, and it was around 4:35 in the afternoon. I'm walking from my office to the bathroom, and thank God I was walking close to the wall because all of a sudden I felt this pain in my back, and I had
Mm.
never experienced that before. And it was like this sharp pain, tears in my eyes, like, I was like, "Wha" I like, you would have thought that somebody, like, hit me really hard, like, right in my lower back.
Yeah.
And I was right outside of a conference room, and I, like, hobbled, like, literally, like, very carefully into the conference room, sat down, and thought it would just pass, and it
Mhm.
didn't, and I was in so much pain, I felt like I couldn't walk. Luckily, my husband was in a meeting not far from my office that day.
Mhm.
I mean, literally, and I'm like, "It's not even the end of the day yet, right?" And I'm like, "I need you to come and get me." And
Mhm.
urgent care, and they said, "Oh, you threw out your back." And I mean, I'm like 35, right? Like, I
Walking in
think
the hallway.
yeah, walking in the hallway. I think of people who throw out their back as being either much older or frankly much more physical than I was at the time. Like, and I was like, how did when I explained to the doctor, I was like, I'm literally walking. I didn't do any like weird, you know what I mean? Like crazy move or anything.
Mhm.
And she said, nope, that just is what happens. And I was out, still working, of course, but I was out as in home, like not in the office for 2 weeks, could hardly move,
Hmm.
then started going to physical therapy, and
Wow.
this was all new for me because 'cause I've never done anything like this at all
Mhm.
in my life, and I went to the physical therapist, and she said to me, "Oh, this is from lack of motion." And I was like, "What?" "Oh, yeah." She's like and she said it in this way that was, like, so nonchalant. I was like, "Wait a minute, hold on. Can you say that again?" She said, "Yeah, you just need to move your body more." I said, "So, how do I have this never happen again?" She said, "You need to move your body more." She's like, "Tell me about your day." And I said, "Well, my day, I get to the office, I sit down, and then about 7, 8 o'clock, I stand up." You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much the day with, like, bouts of meetings in between. And she says, "Yeah, you don't move enough. You just simply need to
Hmm.
move more." And
Mhm.
I was thunderstruck, honestly, A, that I was having this physical thing happen to me that I caused,
Yeah.
and then B, the cause was lack of movement. Like, not even you know what I mean? Not even like there was skiing or some great store. No, it's
Right.
you need to move more. So I said, "Okay," and it took me a good 2 months to really, like, rehab. I joined the gym, I was swimming and because walking was still kind of hard.
Mhm.
I got past that, but then when I got back to the office, I said, "Alright, I don't want that, so I never wanna experience that again," right? So
Mhm.
I need to move more. So some of the things that I did immediately to get more motion in my day, because what I couldn't do was do less work, right? So I was like, "Okay, so this is
Right.
my schedule as a mid-level associate. So, like, how do I put more motion in?" So, some of the little tricks I had was I would go to the bathroom 1 floor down.
That's
So,
pretty good actually.
I got
So
a
you're
couple of
doing
steps.
yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple of steps, and I had an unintended benefit of that was the floor beneath me was the conference room floor. So, I would run into all sorts of people, partners in other groups, associates, assistants, AV folks. Like I just like actually like made friends with lots of people because they would see me because I'd be
That's
down there
so
like three, four
cool.
nights a day. So that
Yeah.
was cool. And then you also avoided the running into a partner on the way to the bathroom on your own floor where they asked you like where something is. That's also something that was good. People listening know what I'm talking about, where you're like hiding out in your office and yeah, okay. All right, we won't talk about that. So, um, so like walking more and taking breaks during the day, going for lunch, walking not to the close chopped, but the chop that was farther away. Little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a activity tracker, so I was able to track my steps. And fortunately, I got past that, and I have never had a back problem since.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I could say everything was better and, roses from there. Because about a year after that, I was at a doctor's appointment and my doctor told me I had dangerously high blood pressure and said, if you don't get your blood pressure under control, you're going to have to get on pressure medication. And I have the same sort of thunderstruck. Now I'm like 36 and I'm like, what? Like, no, this is not it.
Yeah.
And so that it was those two things, those combination where I was like, okay, I really need to address this in a real way, in a real
Mm-hmm.
way. Cause I'm just obviously the universe is telling me something and I don't need every year to keep on getting something
Mm-hmm.
happening to me. So 2 times I'm done.
I guess I have two sort of questions around that. Number one, it's interesting that you describe all these sort of small modifications that you made to your lifestyle,
Yeah.
or small habits that you
Look,
changed,
look,
right? As opposed to, you know, oh my God, my solution needs to be I'm going to go and run the New York City Marathon or something, right? So like that's an observation, but I think there's also a question in there. Like, was that intentional? Did you really try to? And then, I'm also curious, like, how did you try to, after sort of the second case, like, how did you try to maybe solve this in a slightly bigger way as well, or make bigger changes to your lifestyle?
yeah, yeah, good questions. So on the first, it's my personality is such that I like small changes.
Hmm.
So that's probably why I leaned into that versus let me do an Ironman or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but also the reality was I had a particular work schedule
Hmm.
and there were certain things that I had in control and certain things that I didn't.
Hmm.
And so if I can only modulate like an hour or two of my day,
Hmm.
then let me try to optimize that. So that was the way I was thinking because
Yeah.
the idea of, well, let me just leave the practice of law and do something else. Or let me leave this law firm and do something else that'll maybe get me home by 6 o'clock so I can train for the Ironman. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
certainly it's something I could have done, but I wasn't ready at all to leave my big law job. I was enjoying it. It was going great. So it was, how do you do this job, but
Hmm.
but turn some things, right? Turn some levers so that you don't keep on getting doctors telling you
Hmm.
crazy things every year. So
It's really great advice, actually, because a lot of people can make improvements around the margins, right? Or have the ability to modify habits in small ways. It's tough to rejigger your whole life in
yeah,
some.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think when you take the smaller changes, of course, focusing on changes that actually have impacts, right? So
Mhm.
don't go the small change that doesn't really impact anything because then when you
Mhm.
don't see a change, you'll get frustrated or maybe you'll feel like, what's the point?
Mhm.
So pick things that'll actually do something, right? So I went
Mhm.
from no steps a day to,
Right.
right, to like 5,000 steps, which was not 10,000, which is the goal, but 5 was better than 0 when I did see a difference.
Yeah.
Um, but then also, I think it's just easier to think and easier to commit to
Mhm.
smaller changes.
Mhm.
For me, speaking completely for myself,
Mhm.
when I learned to cook, I didn't start with Thanksgiving dinner. Right? I said, let me learn to make an omelet. Okay, good. Omelet is made. Now
Mhm.
let me do that. And then all of a sudden, I could put together a whole meal and like multiple courses and whatever, whatever. You know what I mean? So that's the approach that I take. I think it's just the more sustainable way to approach change. Again, for me.
How did you know that you were ready to leave Big Law then at some point in time and go in house? And how did you make that choice or that pivot? Yeah.
Yeah, that's so a few things, but mostly it came down to I was ready to do something else. And I've always been this way where things have to feel right
Mm-hmm.
and I trust myself. I trust my instinct and my intuition in
Yes.
things. And when something is not feeling like it's where I should be anymore, I don't question it too much. I mean, I question it a little bit, but I don't question it too much. So I got to 8 years in and I said, okay, I think I'm ready to do something else now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Went for it.
Yeah.
How did you find the sort of scope of responsibility or the stress between the two sorts of types of legal work compared? When you joined Resi as GC, on the one hand, you don't have like a bunch of clients breathing down your neck and you don't have the partnership structure and you're not tied to
Mhm.
the billable hour, and right. But on the other hand, I think a lot of times folks find that sort of in-house role, especially when you're the GC,
Yes.
um, the stakes feel a little higher for you and it feels a little more personal. And yeah, I don't know. Talk to us a little bit about
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Being in house, certainly a GC, but being in house in general versus being in the law firm are horses of completely different color, even though it's the same profession.
Mm-hmm.
And the pros and cons of both. Evan, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm glad for my time at the firm because my time at the firm prepared me for this.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have done this job had I left as a fifth year, right? Like
Right.
I needed that seasoning, that time at the firm to come and do. But one of the things, well, there's a lot of things, but one of the major things I would say is the difference is the buck stops with you when you're in house.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in house, everything is kind of a big deal. And by that, I mean this, that of course, when you are talking with the team and you're working through a product, that's obviously like mission critical stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are also smaller questions and decisions that you really got to get right because they could then have an impact. So something as simple as, oh, we want to hire this person. Do we bring them on as an employee or an independent contractor? Well, those are two
Right.
very different things, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so you got to ask some questions. And what you don't want to do is run afoul of Department of Labor laws, right? So
Right.
even though this question is just like this, a quick question that comes over Slack, likely, it's still important and it still takes like your whole big lawyer brain. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of the hours in house are better
Yeah.
generally. Oh, that's the big secret. Don't tell anybody. But like that, they are better generally.
Mm-hmm.
Every single decision is like full body contact sport. Whereas when you're outside counsel, every deal is full body, but then you go from deal to deal to deal, and you have these like dips. I don't have it
Mm-hmm.
as GC because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as busy. Those questions, those independent, contractor versus employee, questions still come up that I need to like show up for mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So
Are
it's
there strategies that you used in the early days as being a GC or that you've learned over time to help you sort of wind down or to help you create space for yourself? Because I think that's one you're hitting on something that I've heard from a number of folks, which is, at the firm, it might be like work, 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 work on this deal, but you know what the end game is and what, right, as opposed to I mean, there's always something else you could do for your business, right? I mean,
100%,
yeah.
100%. The,
Yeah.
the, the to-do list never ends. Um, the wind down, that has been um a process for me to figure out what, and it has also changed as I've gotten older, in my opinion. Of what I would use to wind down. So when I was younger, for me, going out, hanging out with friends,
Sure.
that was wind down. Now, I still love to do that. But when we're really talking about wind down, it's yoga class,
Hmm.
spending time with my husband. It's taking a walk around the neighborhood. That I find that to be rejuvenating and relaxing. So it has changed. And but I'm really intentional about it. But there's one thing that I do, and I actually did it, was it last week or week before? It's 2 weeks ago. I call them aggressive self-care days.
Okay.
And what I do is I take a day off of work.
Hmm.
I let everybody know,
Hmm.
Tyler, I'm going to be off next Wednesday. And I'm telling you this like a weekend, you know what I mean? Like I'm letting you know.
Yeah.
And on that day, I just do what I want to do. There's no chores. There's no taking care of other people. It's a day full of whatever Keita feels like doing.
Yeah.
I find those days to be incredibly rejuvenating. And
Yeah.
and legit, I do it like twice a year. So it's not even that much, but
Hmm.
it has a massive, massive impact. And I can feel when I need it. When I'm like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like it's like you're wound really tight and you're like, you know what, I need a day just to release. I'll say for anybody listening who wants to take on like try this, here's a tip.
Yeah.
So make sure to tell your job, but don't forget to tell your family. Because on that morning of my aggressive self-care day, my husband says, "Oh, Keita, can you do," and then lists off 3 things. And I look at him, he looks at me, and he's like, "What? Aren't you off today? You have time." I said, "Yeah, I am off today, but no, I do not have time. I'm doing me today, so I will get to those things, but not today." And he looked at me a little bit like I was crazy, and then he was like, "Okay." And I was like, "We've done this before. Like, you know what this is." And he's like, "Okay, okay." And he dropped it. But so don't forget about your family. It's the point. Don't
It's not the day to hang the TV on the
no.
wall or reorganize the garage or
Yes, unlike Tyler, those things truly give you joy.
Right.
But if it's on your to-do list of things that need to be done, but it doesn't actually give you joy,
Hmm.
don't do it on these days.
After nearly 200 conversations with GCs and legal ops leaders, one thing's clear: AI is everywhere. But does it always deliver results? Not always. We talked with legal professionals to find out what's actually working, what's not, and where AI delivers value or totally misses. If you're thinking about investing in legal tech, you need this intel. Download our free AI impact report. It'll make your next AI decision way smarter. Links in the description. I love that idea. Okay, this is speaking of wind downs,
Yes.
different transition.
Oh, different kind of wind down. Yes.
um, Resi, while you were there, shut down in 2023,
Yes.
and I've had a few guests on, a couple at least, who've been through that sort of experience, and it's certainly not an easy one,
Yeah.
especially when you're in the GC seat,
Mhm.
because you're often one of the last people, if not the last person there, to turn out the lights.
100%.
Um, Curious for you to tell us a little bit about that experience and also how you processed that as an individual in your first GC role, how you processed that professionally, thinking about, okay, what am I going to do next? Yeah, tell us
Yeah.
about it.
So experiencing a wind down is something unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I don't think that there's anything that you can compare it to.
Hmm.
So for the folks who've gone through it, you know what I mean. And the folks who haven't, I hope you never do, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is very, very challenging on many levels. And what you just said, it's professionally, but also personally. For me, I can recall feeling a level of physical stress that I had never felt before
Hmm.
because you're trying to wind down a company in the most responsible way. You
Mm-hmm.
also have the human side of you had all these employees who dedicated so much time. So you're dealing with them and with that, and you want to make sure that they land as well as possible. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's all of the things, the creditors and the vendors that, kind of the things that you think of. But then you also have your own thoughts on, gosh, I thought this was gonna go differently. I mean, and
Mhm.
it's tech startup. It's not so strange for a company to wind down, but
Mhm.
it still is a challenging thing to go through it. And so I found myself, as I said, feeling physical level of stress, reminding me of back in those days when I was experiencing the high blood pressure. And I can actually like, I don't know
Mhm.
how to describe it, but like I can feel it. I didn't need to check my pressure to know
Yeah.
what's going on. And I said, I need a like an escape valve. What do you call those things? Like the steam when you release the steam,
Yeah, like an
right?
escape valve. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, and I've taken yoga since college, and I have
Mhm.
found myself coming in and out of the yoga studio often when things were the hardest in my life. So
Hmm.
sometimes 3rd L year, studying for the bar, like there were these moments
Mhm.
where I was like in the studio every day, and something said, "I need to go back to yoga." And during this wind down, I was going to yoga every single day, hot yoga, and it was the thing that kept me sane.
Mhm.
It was the thing that released the pressure. I found myself coming out of the studio after that physical workshop work and that really good sweat, feeling very clear. So then I could
Mhm.
sit back at the computer with a clear mind because things move so fast and you have to make
Yeah.
decisions very, very quickly. And when you're making these decisions, you have to consider all of the pieces. You know what I mean? So it's winding down a company is unlike kind of day-to-day legal work for sure.
Mhm.
So you have to bring everything to bear. And if you are not good and you are not clear-minded,
Hmm.
then I dare say that let's just say it'll be a whole lot harder to do your job.
Yeah.
So that was yoga. Yoga saved me through that experience. It really did. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that one.
Anything that you learned, it's a very high pressure sort of situation and
Mhm.
things are also going wrong or these are tough decisions that are being made
Yeah.
and different people respond to that, I think, in better ways than others, right? Like anything that you learned or that you took away from it, in terms of how you want to carry yourself as a leader, within an organization.
Well, one thing, well, two things. I will say I will give myself a compliment and I'll give myself grace
Yeah.
and say that I kind of always knew I was good in crises,
Hmm.
but I discovered I'm really good. That I stay calm, I stay clear-headed,
Hmm.
and I don't let my emotions take over my thoughts or even
Hmm.
take over the moment. And maybe that was yoga. Maybe that was
Yeah.
that's what helped me. I don't know. Um, but I was really impressed with myself. And that may sound a little silly, but I think you gotta give yourself a high five when you
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
the other thing is certainly integrity.
Mm.
Integrity is really important through the process because you're you are in a situation where you're winding the company down and you are dealing with, as I said, all the different constituents,
Mhm.
and nobody's walking away how they hoped they would walk away.
Mhm.
And there is just a level of honesty that you have and you have to
Yeah.
see, right? And say, okay, this is where we are, this is what we can do, and this is this is what I've got, right?
Yeah.
And you don't run from the hard conversations, and you say what you mean and you mean what you say, and it's so simple, but in those really hard moments, it's actually really, really difficult to do that.
Mhm.
You kind of like stand on your own integrity and on your own word.
When was it that you decided to start becoming a yoga instructor? Was it, like, during this experience, before this experience? Is that a new thing?
So I'll tell you, it was actually the very first yoga class that I took my sophomore year in college. I knew that I would eventually become a yoga teacher.
Uh-huh.
I had in my mind because I was yoga for me was an immediate from the first class. I was like, I love this. Um, and I had in my mind that I would be retired, and I kind of pictured myself like this like older woman with like gray locks and like a caftan. You know what I mean? And like colorful beads. Like that's how I was kind of thinking.
Yeah.
That's it's not. what ended up happening, but that's what I was thinking. And then in the transition out of Resi into Rise, when I was thinking about and what next, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I have always thought about this. It's always been in the back of my mind. And there's no time like the present because you do not know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we do this now. And that was literally what it was. Yeah.
I love that. Um, what excites you about, or what got you excited about taking on another GC role and
Oof.
moving to Rise and saying, okay, this didn't end quite how we expected, but now I'm going to go and I'm going to do it all over again, hopefully with a different result.
Well, I can remember when Sean, who was the CEO with Resi and also is the CEO with Rise, said, "So I have an idea." And I was like, "I can't, Sean. I just need a second. I need a second." And then I took a breath. I said, "Okay, let me hear your idea." And he told me the idea for Rise, and I was like, "Oh, that's brilliant. I love it. It's amazing. Yes, that sounds really good." And I didn't know that he was gonna offer me the GC job. Like, we were just
Hmm.
having a conversation. And then when he did, he said to me something that has stayed with me. He said, I know you're a great lawyer, like I've experienced that with you now.
Hmm.
He said, but I want you in this job. Like having worked with you through the transition out of a company,
Hmm.
he saw not just my legal skills, but also my like who I was.
Hmm.
Right. And he said, "Yeah, I want you to be the GC." So I thought about it because I was thinking for a second, like, oh, do I really, like, do I need a break? Like,
Yeah.
and I said, yes, I do need a break, but this opportunity is amazing. So I'm gonna jump and I'll take the break, like maybe like little mini breaks. You know what I mean? But I don't want to miss this chance and this opportunity. So I said, hell yeah, I'm in.
I mean, mini breaks. I think when we first talked to start prepping for this, you were at a yoga retreat, but still taking some calls in
Yes.
the Dominican Republic. Are there ways that you think about sustainability of your energy now in different ways, having been through all of these different experiences, or setting boundaries in different ways? Like, how do you put that into practice maybe today?
So I think about it as an and not an or.
Hmm.
And by that I mean I am a hardworking, talented, super smart, get the job done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
Yeah.
lawyer, and I take care of myself.
Hmm.
And the two must coexist because I know from experience, personal experience, that if you don't take care of the latter, the former is going to go away. Like you
Hmm.
can't, if you can't walk, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and you're in so much pain, how good can you be in the practice of law? So I, um, I am very, very committed to doing both.
Hmm.
And I'm very committed in creating space in my day. So when I have my morning walks or I have my evening yoga, it's on my calendar and it's
Hmm.
blocked. And so people know. But the trade-off is if I'm in a yoga class, let's say I'm in 6:30 to 7:30 class and something's going on, the trade-off is 7:45,
Yeah.
I'm back on. Right? I don't say, "Oh,
Sure.
I went to yoga. I'll talk to you tomorrow."
Right.
So, it's and sometimes that doesn't feel the best. Like you kind of want to just like chill after a
Hmm.
yoga class. But if something is going on, I'm still the good lawyer, right? And so
Hmm.
that's the and. That's the and part.
There's something else I want to ask you about that sort of idea of being a good lawyer, or like being, really good at your job.
Mhm.
Um, and it's around the sort of concept of like high standards, or people, wanting to get things right all the time, and I think that's a transition that a lot of people make from, okay, technically it is possible to make sure there's no typos in a document that's 100 pages, or, to get the like logo perfectly right on every single slide that you send to the client. I mean, those things. But how is your thinking on like what it means to hold yourself to high standards? How has that thinking evolved over time here, and what it means to be a good lawyer too?
Yes. So this is something at Resi. I'm a solo right now, but at Resi, I had a small team. And this was something that we talked about a lot
Mm-hmm.
because being the big law trains lawyer down to the file name, I have a naming convention. Right?
Mm-hmm.
um, however, we've got to move, right? Like we are in a fast-paced, high growth,
Mm-hmm.
venture backed startup. So you cannot take an extra 2 hours to make sure that everything is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
However, you should take the extra 2 hours if there's a material point that needs to be fixed and so like you've got to figure out what is mission critical and what would be great to do if I had an extra day. I'll put it like that.
Sure.
And sometimes those two can become fuzzy as the perfectionist lawyer that I am and most people are. And it's to keep the line separate. Now, I certainly have looked at a contracts that I've drafted later and be like, I could have said that in a little bit of a better way. And then I
Sure.
ask myself, but is it correct? And if a judge was looking at it, would he or she interpret it the way that you meant? If the answer is yes, then you're okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whereas at the firm, it would be like the absolute right, best, perfect, using all the right adjectives and semicolons. You know what I mean? And so you have to make those decisions because what you cannot do as a lawyer anywhere, but certainly in my job, is you cannot slow the business down.
Mm-hmm.
I have built an incredible amount of trust with the business where if I say I need, and this happened actually earlier today, one of the
Mm-hmm.
business owners called me and I said, I need 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that I really do need 30 minutes before I
Mm-hmm.
answer the question. And he knows I'm not just making it up or there she goes again. You know what I mean? Like being a perfectionist or not understanding what's important. Gotta
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye on what's important.
Where does that come from? Is that just judgment that's sort of like honed over time? I don't know.
Judgment,
Yeah.
yeah, and it certainly, and the question is, what is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Hmm.
And the second question is, if you don't accomplish it, what would be the fallout? What would be the result?
Yeah.
So going back to the example of the sentence that was not perfectly written, right?
Yeah.
If the result is what you wrote, a judge or an arbiter can decide that what you meant was not what you meant. That's
Mm-hmm.
important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if the result is somebody would look at this and chuckle and be like, I can't believe this lawyer wrote it that way, sure, nobody wants to be laughed at, right?
Yeah.
But that the result is something that you can live with, particularly if what is going to fix the second part, like, the rewriting of the sentence, is you
Mm-hmm.
take an extra 20 minutes when the salesperson is on the phone with the client saying, oh, the contract is coming right now. You
Mm-hmm.
take 20 minutes, and the person's ready to sign. No, no, leave the
Mm-hmm.
sentence, take the chuckle
Yeah.
and see like, yeah. So it's judgment, but the judgment has been honed with understanding. Risk is not quite the right word, but kind of what would happen if
Mm-hmm.
kind of thinking.
Maybe a last substantive question before we get to some of my traditional closing questions for my guests.
Yes.
Uh, it's how you balance this with self compassion, which I think is something that probably everybody that I've ever had on, is working on, even if I don't ask them about it.
Right. Mm-hmm. How do I balance it with self-compassion? So I'm going to answer that a little differently because
Sure.
I don't think, and I'll think about this later and maybe I'll have a different answer as I'm like tonight running this conversation all through my head. Speaking of perfectionism, But I don't think that self-compassion is something I struggle with. What I have struggled with and I have had a lot of growth in is believing in myself and believing that I am a good lawyer. I am kind of all of the things that I know I am.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that has been a journey because for some reason it took me years to embrace the idea that I actually knew what I was doing.
Hmm.
And the transition actually happened when I was going from big law to in-house. And it was a conversation with my big brother. It was at my
Huh.
birthday party. And he puts his arm around my brother. If you met him, you kind of he's like one of these like sage, like always says like really smart, always like a little bit ridiculous. Like it's like equal parts. Like it's great. He's great. So he puts his arm around me. So I don't know what he's about to say because it could go either way, right? And he says to me, Keita, it's time for you to step into your light. And then he walks away, right? And I'm standing there, like, what does that mean? And I said, I know what it means. I need to believe in myself. I need to go into this next job
Mm-hmm.
with all of the confidence because if I have the confidence, then they're going to believe in me.
Yeah.
Right. And the opposite is also true. So that self, I don't even know, self love, but love,
Belief. Yeah.
belief. I was like, love,
Yeah.
that's never a question. Self belief. Belief, that has been the thing that has been a journey for me. And I have seen how much better of a lawyer I am when I believe that I am, and and I began to believe it, and now I
Mm-hmm.
know it. Now you can't tell me, you're right. I
Yeah.
absolutely know it's true, but I needed that moment to kind of break out of my own negative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite quotes is, and I don't know who actually said it, so whatever. But so I've like taken it on myself now. But the quote is, "Perhaps the journey is not becoming anything, but it's unbecoming the things that you're not." And I feel like I had to unbecome this person who did not believe in herself,
Mm-hmm.
and then with that shedding was like, "Oh wow, look who this is. She's awesome." So
What a great answer. Uh, really great answer. Okay, Keita. Your favorite way to, and maybe it's yoga, to unwind or reset after a long day, or your favorite part of your day to day. Take us through that.
okay, so definitely yoga. It's big surprise, big surprise. Walks. I find walks. That was actually another thing I should have mentioned during the wind down.
Mm-hmm.
That also was a lifesaver. Just 20 minutes outside. Get some sun on your face,
Mm-hmm.
close the laptop, like just being away from the thing that is
Mm-hmm.
what's causing the stress is an incredible de-stressor to go back to it. So, so yeah, wind down for me is certainly walking, certainly yoga. What was the other question?
Oh, just like favorite part of your day to day. Is it yoga or is it something else?
Part of my day. Well, I've got to say something about Ryse.
Yeah.
Yeah, the favorite part. So today's the last day of the month,
Mhm.
and it's always a push, right? Last day of the
Mhm.
month, and I just love how well the team works with each other,
Yeah.
and everybody is so smart. Everybody's so talented, and it just sort of like there's like this like great synergy amongst people, and everybody kind of brings their expertise to
Mhm.
the problem or to the thing. And it's very, very cool. And I never feel like I'm working against, it's never like, oh, here comes the lawyer. You know what I mean? It's never that. Today was a very busy day, and it reminded me of how awesome this team is.
That's great. Um, okay, I think this is kind of a funny one. I like asking people this question. Do you have a professional pet peeve?
Okay. So my name is Keita de Souza, which
Yes.
I have heard some people say is a challenging name to say. Um, my pet peeve, and I never really understood this, is if you see a name like mine written, it's fair to assume that maybe you don't know how to say it because these are, no, neither name is an English name.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just ask? And so my pet peeve is when people say my name or other names that
Mm-hmm.
are maybe not in the person's language, and they just make it up.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really the problem is not so much the makeup, it's the not acknowledging that you made it up. And
Yeah.
so butchering the name and then just moving on. And it's like, it's my name. It's the most basic way that you identify me. So it just feels like, please take the time, or simply say, butcher it and then say, did I say that correctly? And
Right.
I'll say, oh no, thank you for asking. It's actually this. So that's
And
that's one that's one of them.
And for the record, folks should not feel scared because you've corrected me, or not
You
correct.
should.
Corrected is not the right word, but you've guided me.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing, and I'll say this is like a PSA for everybody who has a quote unquote difficult name, which I don't like that designation, but I'll use it.
Yeah,
um, is we know that we have a quote
right,
unquote difficult name. It's not a shock to us. So when you ask, nobody's going to be like, I can't believe you don't know how to say Keita de Souza. Like,
right.
no, of course not. So, and I'm like, thank you so much for asking. Then people then will say, like, where is it from? And then it could turn into a very nice conversation. Even if
Hmm.
it doesn't, please just ask.
It's a good answer, and not one that I've heard before on this podcast, which is good. Um, okay, is there a book that you would recommend for our listeners to read?
Yes. So, like a true Gemini, I have two types. So I did prepare for this. So I'm reading and I'm looking at my notes here because I don't want to mispronounce the name. Um, the author's name is Alison Frigale, I believe is the
Okay.
pronunciation. The book is called Likeable Badass. So this book was recommended to me by a group of women that I recently met, and a bunch of people from this group said this is the book that they are reading or have read or that she really loved. And so I picked it up. I'm only on chapter 3, Tyler, and I'm already gonna read it again because like there's a lot going on. And then B, I know this is a book I'm gonna come back to yearly.
Hmm,
But
that's
it
high praise.
yes. So the book is kind of lightweight blowing my mind, and it's just chapter 3. So
I might have to pick that one up. That sounds really
please do,
interesting.
please do. Likeable badass. Let me know what you think. And then on the health and wellness side, of course, I have health and wellness books. Um, China Study by T. Colin Campbell, and Never Be Sick Again by Francis. Gosh, what's his last name? What name's ever written here? Raymond Francis. Raymond Francis. Both excellent books. I read them yearly. I don't want to give away
Huh.
what they're about.
Uh-huh.
Um, but they are about the connection between, well, China studies the connection between what you eat and your health
Mhm.
from like a research perspective. Well written and interesting. Don't worry, it's not like a boring book. And then Never Be Sick Again talks about what I was saying earlier about this idea that wellness is all of the things. It's your health,
Mhm.
it's your spiritual, it's your emotional, and he kind of goes through chapter by chapter to help you really think about these different areas of your life. So I've read them all multiple times, and each time I read them, either I'm reminded of something or I learn something new. So I love them, both of those books.
We'll put all 3 of those in the show notes. I
Thank
like it when my guests come with multiple book recommendations.
you.
I
Thank
read
you.
like 6 books at once. It takes me
Oh,
a long
wow.
time to get through them, so I
Can I make a fun book recommendation?
Oh, of course, please. Yeah.
So I am almost done with RuPaul's autobiography,
Huh.
and it's really good. I love an
Entertaining?
autobiography. Yeah,
Yeah.
super entertaining, some really great lessons. It's called, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name. I'll tell you so you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But it's so good. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Okay, last question for you.
Yes.
My traditional closing question for my guests. It's, if you could look back on your days as a young lawyer just getting started maybe at the firm, Something that you know now that you wish that you'd known
Mm,
back then.
so many things. Just one. So well, certainly top of mind is take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Take care of, don't just work really hard and take care of yourself. And I'll also say what I said just now is I wonder what would have happened had I understood earlier how good of a lawyer I am. If I'd had that confidence early. I don't know. Probably the exact same life, but interesting question.
A great question to ask. I don't know if we've ended on a question like that before. Keita, this has been so much fun. Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Abstract.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for having me.
And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.